This is what I've always found working as a wealth advisor. People are they have no idea that sometimes they're sitting on a literal gold mine.
Welcome back to Marketing Made Iconic. Today's guest is someone whose name carries weight, literally. Rachel Flood is a fourth-generation entrepreneur, continuing a legacy of innovation and quality under the Flood brand. From manufacturing to solar to property and wealth advice, Rachel's building something truly bold, and she's doing it her way. In today's episode, we'll unpack Rachel's entrepreneurial journey, how she's navigating the finance and property world, grit and ingenuity, and the mindset shifts needed to build real wealth even when the road gets rocky. Rachel, you've got one of the most well-known names in this brand business world, and you've chosen to build on it in your own unique way. Can you tell us first about the Flood legacy and what it means to be the fourth generation building under that brand?
Absolutely, yeah. So the Flood name in manufacturing started in 1907 by my great-grandfather, James Flood. He's well known, a bit of an icon in the car industry. So he was rather successful doing coach building for, brands such as Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Bugatti, Mercedes, Hispano Suiza, and the list just goes on and on and on. That empire ran for, we finished up the cars. So my grandfather took that over when he passed away in 1955, and that went on until 1980 when my dad turned it into an electrical and plumbing suppliers manufacturing company. And that is still running today. My dad still runs it, so it's still operating. And I suppose I was like the chosen one because I'm my dad's daughter and I'm his firstborn. I've been mentored my whole life in business from the time I was in primary school. I've always been around the business. Dad had me working in there at the factory at 12 years old. Didn't really have a choice. So no one of money at that age. But
Of course you did.
yeah, I asked him for a handout for $20 to go to a movie with my auntie and my sister, and he goes, "Nah." He goes, "You can come in and work tomorrow." I go, "Oh, okay," because I was a good little girl. I didn't argue. And he goes, "All right, I'll be there at 7:30 to pick you up in the morning." So that's how it all started in year 7. But yeah, so I was always going to be the next one to carry that through if I really chose to, and I have decided to because it's quite an inspirational, long story.
Yeah, beautiful.
I hope to continue the manufacturing side. I do have ideas, but we'll wait and see.
Right. Yeah. And I know you've worn a lot of hats from wealth advisor, solo entrepreneur, which we talked about before, mortgage broker, property developer. Tell us how did that journey unfold?
So, wealth advising. So solar, I started off as a solar rep. I just did it as an in-between job, and I ended up being a top rep there. I was only there for like 5 months, and I was on a lot of money. And then I went back into property. So I was a wealth advisor for a property developer in Queensland, ended up being state manager, and I ran a team here in Victoria probably nearly 15, 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And that folded. And so, it was just solar was just an in-between thing. I knew there was good money there. And I've sort of gone back to it here and there in between things. And I was in property for many years. So, and I decided to go out on my own because of the toxicity in the work environments that I was in.
Yeah.
And I always had a plan to eventually go back out on my own because I'd been rorted in business as well. So I had to just go back and simplify my life and
Mm,
just get a job, and so to speak. Um, and yeah, I always wanted to go back out on my own, but without being associated with anyone else, because that was always a problem. My dad always gave me that advice, and he said if I ever used the flood name, I'd have to not have partners because we've never had business
mm.
partners. And it's also so we can protect the heritage of the
Yeah.
business. Yeah, so
Sense.
taking my dad's advice has been the best advice ever, really, honestly.
And it was ingrained in you from a really young age, and now you're able to carry
I
that
can really
on.
utilize my skills and knowledge now without being
Yeah.
scared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned it a little bit before, but tell us a little bit about that shift that you made from going from your six-figure career into going out on your own.
I always had plans to from day dot, but I was going to do it differently this time, obviously, learning from my mistakes of trusting people. Um, or trusting people too much. And
Mm,
yeah, I suppose I got to a point where I'd achieved what I wanted to achieve there. I was the highest earning employee there at that time and hardest
mm.
working. And I suppose I got bored doing what I was doing there and
I suppose when you reach
felt,
your top of your
oh, it was
game.
toxic as well. Yeah, there was bullying going on in the workplace. And I had my birthday and I got bullied for taking time off. So I just thought it was time to move on and just do what I wanted to do. And it was the right timing.
Yeah.
So
Control
yeah,
your own future.
universe was pushing me away to just go do what I'm supposed to be doing, I suppose.
Yeah. And look, I think, you told me in our initial chat, you are working with clients all over the world now. You've got clients in Europe and Magnolia,
In
um,
China. Yep.
China. And so this is very interesting around this global side. Like most of my conversations have been very Australian focused. So tell us a bit more about that. How did the global side of the business come about and what's that been like to manage?
Oh, look, that's a natural thing I've always had, I think. Well, it's funny you asked that. And the first thing that sprung to mind was I studied international business and I passed with high distinctions when I finished school. And, well, James Flood, he was my great grandfather. He was shipping cars all over the world in
Yeah.
boxes. So it might be a bit to do with that. It's just naturally with me. And yeah, I'm open to working with clients, if I can help them, I will. I can't
Mhm.
help everybody, but yeah, I suppose I had inquiries come through. I had referrals through a referral network, that I'm a part of, and
Yeah, yeah.
had a group of ladies in Mongolia that want to work with me, and an expat in China. Like, yeah, so that just come through inquiries, really.
Yeah, awesome. You've created a really interesting ecosystem as well, where there's solar leads that come in becomes finance leads, and finance leads can turn into property clients. And I think it's not unusual to find in the property and finance space where there's a lot of things connected, and some businesses, bring multiple facets together. But none have so far. I've never come across. Opening with a solar kind of offering. So tell us how that works. How does the solar business feed into the finance and property side of things?
So when we're dealing with people interested in solar, we're dealing with homeowners generally,
Yeah.
or people that own properties, which, like, as a wealth advisor, that was our target market. So
Mm,
predominantly working with people who already had one property, maybe multiple, and we go in and show them strategies on how to utilize their position better to create more wealth for their retirement or for their children or, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And and I ran this past my aggregator, and they said there was one other group that did a similar thing and it was a great success. So he said, go for it, because when it comes to
Yeah.
finance, you got to be very careful. It's a highly regulated industry and there's conflict of interest as well, especially
Yeah.
when it comes into property. So, but they said there's no conflict of interest with solar, and I've got back end assistance where we ring the solar leads once they've either gone ahead or they're not interested for whatever reason, and we just give them another call to see if there's any other assistance that we can give them in regards to refinancing their house and perhaps looking at their situation and seeing if we can get them into an investment property. We've had good feedback
Mm.
so far.
Yeah,
So
great.
there's no data wastage.
Yeah. And so for someone unfamiliar with your model, how would you describe the way you help clients build wealth?
So a lot of people, it's surprising, and this is what I've always found working as a wealth advisor, people are really, they have no idea that sometimes they're sitting on a literal gold mine with
Yeah.
their position, and, they might have, 400,000 in equity. A lot of people out there do, maybe more, 500,000, and they might be earning 2 or 300 grand a year between the two of them.
Mm.
They could go out, if like we find the right properties for them, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of key factors around finding the right investment property so they can continue to buy more in the future. And that's where we come into play.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, they're just oblivious to it. And once we go in and show them, they're like, oh my God. And it literally is about, utilizing their current position without it affecting their day-to-day lifestyle.
Yeah. Love that. What's been the most surprising or challenging thing about creating that a cross industry business like this?
Um, I think the most exciting thing is educating people and inspiring people.
Yeah.
Um, you know, a lot of people see self-funded retirees as super rich, wealthy people, but it's
Mm.
not really the case anymore. I think people should aim to be a self-funded retiree as a normal thing these days, because the government are not there supporting people like they used to.
Mm.
And people really need to not look at relying on pensions and stuff as they retire, because they just won't have a very good quality of life if it's even there by the time they retire. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
working with a wealth advisor and learning all the important things to get themselves right is, I think, key.
Yeah. And now you've been through it all. You mentioned, you're quite resilient. You've been ripped off by bad partnerships, and you've still come back and rebuilt. And that takes serious resilience. What were some of the biggest lessons you've learned from your challenges of launching your business?
Um, well, for one, when I was, partnered with people or working with crooks, I think I was, like I said, trusting people too much. I was very naive.
Mhm.
And I wasn't using the flood name when I was doing these things. My dad would have ripped my head off. But, and that's, my dad was just right with everything he said. So yeah, I had people run off with money. I'd loan them to finish off projects in the Middle East and Europe. And, um, I was looking at, there was a project, and I would have been retired at the age of 35, and there was three of us,
Mm.
and we were looking at buying a jet plane each. So we were looking to bring in $10 million residual income each a month.
Wow.
And people, that devastated me for a long time. I actually had to save one of the guys involved. I saved his life. He tried to kill himself, unfortunately, from the stress of it all. And yeah, it was horrendous. And I just thought that was my turning point, all of that stuff, when a huge project like that went under.
Is it a
It
case
devastated
of,
a lot of people. Yep.
yeah, is it one of those things where sometimes if it sounds too good to be true, it often is?
I think so, but it was all ready to go. And I think the problem was people got greedy, and it was all very, very real. It was a technology streaming product that had never been done before.
Yeah.
And we had the whole Middle East set up. The testing had been done. The servers were set to go. And my business partner took off with our cash, the server, and screwed everybody over in every way that he could. Yeah,
Mm.
it was horrendous. He did it across a magnitude of projects. So yeah, that was because I was ready to retire at 35, and like seriously, it was steps. And yeah, for that to happen, I just went right back to a job where I got my job, my 6 figure income, which I worked up to, and
Mm.
just got what I needed to do for myself. I forgot about everyone else. My boss then was asking me to run his company, and I knocked that back because I just didn't want the stress of it. I didn't
Mm.
want to deal with people anymore after all that. And and then I thought I'll go out on my own and do my own thing like I am now. I wasn't going to do solo. I was just going to do property and finance. But with the way the economy has been, I know a lot about solar because of my dad's electrical industry company as well. So I've been around it
Yeah.
my whole life. And yeah, so side hustles turned into something bigger than I thought.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that's a happy story in the end. But
Yeah. Yeah, it's
I
good.
think a lot of conversations I have been having, and I think a big assumption, especially in Australia, is that property in particular is a very, I guess, low risk, but long term kind of way of building wealth or creating financial freedom. I think my point I was trying to make is that property is a very safe risk, low risk, long term kind of
Yeah,
way of building wealth and financial freedom. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs and founders, there's this entrepreneurial spirit that drives us, that there's varying levels of risk taking. A
absolutely.
lot of entrepreneurs, have a high level of risk appetite. And I feel like when I'm hearing you tell your story about your previous business with the partners and everything,
High risk.
yeah, that's it. And some things work out and some things don't.
Mm,
But what's an interesting theme that's been coming through these podcast episodes around property is it's a very good, for lack of a better way of saying it, safe and low risk way of, everyday
statistics
people.
prove that too. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to ask you, do you have any advice, or what would you tell someone else or another founder who's, coming across some sort of setback, or questioning their next step?
Um, I think listen to your intuition. That's been
Don't
my
ignore it.
biggest guide. Yeah. And don't listen to what people try and tell you. That's been my biggest setback.
Mm.
and people trying to control my next move and so forth. It can become very stressful. And just don't give up.
Yeah. And I
You've got
know,
enough intelligence. Pardon?
no, you go, you go.
Your intuition, I think, has enough natural intelligence inside you to know what you need to do next to make things work. And
Mm.
I've learnt that more so as I've grown older. Um, so yeah, I always listen to what my gut's telling me. My dad will say the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so speaking of your wealth experiences, obviously you're coming from real experience and you've worked with people across the globe. So let's talk about market trends and how people can make smarter decisions right now.
Yep.
What trends are you seeing now, particularly in the Australian property and finance landscape?
Well, of course, we all know the whole economy went haywire with the cash rate and everything being so high. So properties dropped, interest rates were very high. But now, as the interest rates are starting to drop, property is starting to come back.
Mm,
So I think now my biggest, best bit of advice is if you can get into a property now, do it because you'll catch that ride of what's coming in the next couple of years, I think.
yeah. And what's one mistake you see everyday Aussies making when it comes to investment?
Buying the wrong property, buying in the wrong areas,
Yeah.
right? Buying the wrong sort of property. Not they're not educated.
Yeah.
So and they're sitting there with properties wondering, there's been no growth in them or they're very difficult to rent and there's maintenance issues and that's where we come along and we can safeguard you against all that. So, and
Yeah.
even, of course, as a landlord, there's, you may get you may get bad tenants who go in and destroy properties and so forth. So, yeah, there's things you can do to safeguard yourself against that sort of thing happening as well, which is where we come into play as well. But yeah, I mean, if you really don't, if you're an inexperienced investor or a first time investor, definitely reach out and try and get some assistance by someone who really does know.
Yeah.
Um, Not just a mortgage broker because it's not their area and they shouldn't be advising around properties anyway. A lot of them do it anyway, but
Mm,
it's best to actually go and get a professional who's an experienced property strategist. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. One of the other things that stood out to me is you are playing the long game and, as we spoke about, your reach is far beyond Australia and with clients in Magnolia, Europe, China. Um, how are you approaching that global growth? I know you touched on it before with sort of the network, but do you have a strategy around that?
But so we're really kicking off our property marketing in the second half of this year.
Yeah.
A lot of the work that I've done's been just through word of mouth and referrals. Marketing can be a real challenge when operating a business as well. So finding the right people to bring you good quality leads at a reasonable price point has been a huge, huge challenge.
Mm,
But yeah, I think where we want to be now and ready to hit, really bombard, getting leads in and stuff now. But I suppose I didn't go out and actually source those international leads. They just flowed through to me naturally.
that's great.
So I mean, maybe in the future,
Yeah.
I can look at that sort of thing. And I mean, I'm getting referrals through the Mongolia. There's a group there. So yeah, the referral when a customer's happy with you, they
Mm,
will talk about you. and give you
That's
referrals
it.
and stuff. So yeah, that's how that happens. But
Do a good job and more
look,
great ones will come.
and be honest, yeah,
Yeah.
as well. Integrity is
Yeah.
huge. But yeah, so no plans as such to really go worldwide because it's very, very, very difficult.
Yeah.
But I think once we open our Sydney office, which is coming, and that's flowing through nicely. Yeah, once I've done that, then I'll probably look at more international stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, bit open-ended question, where do you see the Flood Group in 5 years? And what's happening?
Well, documentary. We're doing a documentary on my great grandfather, so that will have hopefully ran across TV or streaming networks as well. Um,
Exciting.
yeah, that's part of a PR campaign, I suppose, and also my great grandfather was a very important part of Australian manufacturing and business history. So
Wow.
many people out there would agree that it should be outlined. A lot of people are excited about this. So yeah, once that comes out, who knows? The world is literally my oyster. So yeah, it'll be incredible. I'm very, very excited about the film, the doco. So yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And I always like to finish up by asking what gets you out of bed in the morning?
My dogs.
So the dogs or kids, but what's your internal motivator, Rachel?
They wake me up at 6 every morning for breakfast and toilet, so I'm up. They're my alarm clock. But no, I'm usually pretty awake by yeah, I've because I've got so many things to do. So my supplies office open at 7. Sometimes I've got installers ringing me from a job. What do we do here? Blah blah blah. They're so yeah, I'm up early and usually on phone calls before I've even eaten or had a shower. I'm
Mm,
doing stuff.
hitting the ground running.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, definitely.
Oh, Rachel, thank you so much for sharing your raw, real, and inspiring journey with us today.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank
For
you.
listeners who want to connect with you or explore your world, how's the best way to get in touch?
We've got a few different websites. So www.rlfcorporation.com, that's my consulting business, but www.floodpropertygroup.com and of course www.floodsolar.com. We've got Instagram and Facebook pages as well, so you can just look us up with the names and yeah, drop us a
Great.
line.
Great. So if you love this episode, be sure to share it with a friend or colleague, a founder or an investor, or anyone who's ready to turn challenges into stepping stones. Until next time, thanks for listening to Marketing Made Iconic.